in the Rwandan genocide. More recently, she directed the legal team that drafted the judgment of the Special Court for the Sierra Leone convicting former Liberian President Charles Taylor of war crimes and crimes against humanity. As a guest lecturer, Jessica has taught international women's rights at Harvard Law School. Give a rousing applause for our panelists. I should mention that all of these bios can be found online. They are very lengthy, as you might imagine, because their careers have been amazing. But I'll try to be brief where I can. Eleanor Smeal, we'll ask Eleanor to come up as well. I have the privilege actually to serve on a board with Ellie. I don't know if you remember that we overlapped at the National Council for Research on Women. So I'm happy to have her here today. And as co-founder and president of the Feminist Majority Foundation and its sister organization, Feminist Majority, and former president of the National Organization for Women, Eleanor Smeal has led efforts for the economic, political, and social equality and empowerment of women worldwide for over 3 decades. She has played a leading role in both national and state campaigns to win women's rights legislation and in a number of landmark state and federal court cases for women's rights. Ellie is also the publisher of Ms. Magazine, which the Feminist Majority Foundation wholly owns and operates. One of the architects of the modern drive for women's equality, Ellie is known as a political analyst, strategist, and grassroots organizer. She has played a pivotal role in defining the debate, developing the strategies, and charting the direction of the modern-day women's movement. In 1997, Ellie launched the international campaign to stop gender apartheid in Afghanistan to counter the Taliban's abuse of women. For this work, the Feminist Majority Foundation was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. She is at the forefront of the struggle to win equality for women, to promote women's reproductive rights, and to end violence against women. She has been an activist leader in numerous feminist victories, from the integration of Little League and police departments to the passage of landmark legislation such as the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, Equal Credit Act, Civil Rights Restoration Act, Violence Against Women Act, and Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. She has pushed to make Social Security and pensions more equitable for women. She has campaigned to close the wage gap and to achieve pay equity. As president of the National Organization for Women, Ellie led the drive to ratify the ERA, the largest nationwide grassroots and lobbying campaign in the history of the modern women's movement. The ERA campaign reshaped the contours of women's political participation in the U.S. and demonstrated the strength and breadth of public support for women's rights. It was during this ERA fight that she and her leadership team discovered and defined the gender gap. The Feminist Majority is a lead organization in the current ERA coalition. When many said it could not be done, she led the first national abortion rights march in 1986, drawing more than 100,000 participants to Washington, D.C. She has been a leader in every major reproductive right ever since. When violence threatened to close the nation's women's health care clinics, she developed the Feminist Majorities Foundation's National Clinic Access Project, which is the largest program of its kind in the nation. The Feminist Majority Foundation has trained over 60,000 clinic defenders in some 26 states in nonviolent clinic defense techniques. And she is also the chief architect of the Feminist Majority Foundation's landmark 1994 U.S. Supreme Court case upholding the use of buffer zones to protect clinics. And that case is Madsen versus Women's Health Center. She's a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Duke University, and I would imagine you've probably been over to Duke today, and holds an MA degree from the University of Florida. And she's received honorary doctoral degrees from a number of institutions, including Duke, the University of Florida, and Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Give a rousing applause also for everything. I wanted to introduce the two of them first, since they're they were in the film. I'm going to go back to alphabetical order. We have Representative Carla Cunningham with us. Representative Cunningham is a native North Carolinian, born in Wadesboro, North Carolina in 1962. She graduated in 1980 from Anson Senior High, 1981 from Central Piedmont Community College, licensed practical nurse program, 1996 from Gaston College with an Associate of Science degree in nursing, and in 2009 with honors from Winston-Salem State University, earning a BS degree in nursing. She has practiced as a healthcare professional since 1981 in North Carolina, including in the areas of critical care nursing, medical surgical, neurology, pediatrics, geriatrics, nursing education, nursing management, and most recently, hospice nursing. In 2013, Representative Cunningham was elected by the citizens of Mecklenburg County to serve in the North Carolina House District 106 seat, which she has currently held for 3 terms. Due to her aspirations to help people, she continues to lead the fight each day to find ways to improve job opportunities for the working poor, middle class, and women. She's also a strong voice for public education and healthcare for all citizens of North Carolina, and a staunch advocate for mental health, seniors, women, and children. Since being elected to the North Carolina General Assembly, Representative Cunningham has introduced legislation on equal pay, minimum wage, domestic violence, the Equal Rights Amendment, Whole Women's Health Act, as well as suicide prevention for youth and veterans, and the CARE Act for senior citizens. She is the authentic voice in the North Carolina House Chamber for women and families. She's also the mother of 2 adult children, Kamisha and Kyle, the grandmother of 3, and she mentioned today that she's expecting her great-grandbaby to come any day now. And she is the spouse of the late, she's the widow of the late Representative William P. Cunningham. Welcome to the stage and to the podium. Here, Representative Carla. And we're happy to have our student representative, our in-house feminist and advocate and do everything. And she's also one of our students, student workers at the Carolina Women's Center. This is the wonderful Emily Hagstrom. Emily is a rising senior at the University of North Carolina, majoring in public policy and political science with a minor in women and gender studies. She's a prolific writer on gender equity issues and has spent time working with the National Women's Law Center, the Orange County Rape Crisis Center, the Feminist Majority, and as a Moxie Scholar with Women Advance. Emily is co-chair of the Carolina Advocating for Gender Equity, also called CH, and co-editor of The Siren, UNC's feminist magazine. She currently serves as a program developer for the Carolina Women's Center. We're very proud to have Emily Hagstrom join us. And this is the righteous brother among us. Senator Floyd McKissick has served in the North Carolina State Senate since 2007. He represents Senate District 20, which includes Durham and Granville counties. He currently serves as the Senior Deputy Democratic Leader in Senate. He served as chair of the North Carolina Legislative Black Caucus from 2010 to 2012, chair of the Durham County's Democratic Party from 2005 to 2007, and as a member of Durham City Council from 1993 to 2001, and as a former member of Durham's Board of Adjustment of Durham's Joint City County Planning Commission, and on numerous boards and commissions. Senator McKissick's awards were more than a page long, so I won't share all those with you, but they're worth noting, and certainly I ask you to take a look at them. Let me just share what his current committees are, because I think these are important for us to know where he has influence. He currently serves as a member of the following committees: the Commerce and Insurance Committee, Finance, Judiciary, Rules, and Operation of the Senate, Nominations, and the Appropriations Subcommittee on Health and Human Services. He's also an attorney at McKissick & McKissick in Durham, North Carolina, and he's also served at other law firms in both Durham and Washington, D.C., and has co-authored numerous studies and reports, including a book on attracting foreign direct investment to the United States. And he's an author of several published articles. He received his JD from Duke University School of Law, his master's in public administration from Harvard University's JFK School of Government, where he specialized in management of state and local government and diplomacy. And he also earned a master's in regional planning from the School of City and Regional Planning at the University of North Carolina here at Chapel Hill. And he also got an AB in geography from Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. I almost missed that one. Prior to attending law school, Senator McKissick was a leading expert on large-scale mixed-use developments. In addition, he was a co-instructor at North Carolina Central University School of Law, where he taught courses in civil rights litigation and law office management with his father, the late Judge Floyd B. McKissick Sr. And he's also been a guest speaker and lecturer at numerous universities. So again, we welcome Senator Floyd McKissick. And last, but certainly not least, all the way from Nevada, we have our own addition to this great illustrious panel, Dr. Pat Spearman, who resides in Neuwirth, Dr. Spearman is an ordained minister, a former pastor, and serves on the Global Social Justice Ministry team of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. She served in the U.S. Army for more than 2 decades and retired as a lieutenant colonel. She is serving in her second term as a Nevada state senator representing Senate District 1 in North Las Vegas, Nevada. She is also a former part-time instructor at the University of Louisville. She's received degrees, a BS in political science from Norfolk State University, a Master of Divinity from the Seminary of the Southwest, a doctorate of business administration from Walden University with an emphasis on energy policy. And in addition, she has an extensive training in military education, particularly military police officer basic and other advanced courses. Her doctoral study, using sustainable development as a competitive strategy, provided her the opportunity to gain professional and academic expertise to facilitate improvements in policy development and implementation within the energy industry. She's also a published author, and her doctoral research is widely referenced. Dr. Spearman's North Las Vegas, Nevada legislative experiences include Chair of the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, Chair of Health and Human Service, Chair of the Energy Subcommittee, Vice Chair of Government Affairs, Vice Chair of Government Labor and Energy, and member of Revenue and Economic Development, Education, and Transportation Committees. She is active at the national level as well, with various service committees, including Chair of the Active Military and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee, Vice Chair for the Energy and Environmental Public Policy Committee, a member of the Health and Human Services, and the Executive Committee for the Council of State Governments. She currently serves as a member of the Energy Resource Task Force and the Natural Resources and Infrastructure Committee of the National Conference of State Legislators. State Director for Women in Government, and Women in the Legislative Lobby. A member of the Government Relations Advisory Board for the Las Vegas Metro Armed Forces Chamber of Commerce. Ooh, that's a lot. She's also an active member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and enjoys travel, learning about different cultures, music, and spending time with her family. A rousing applause for all of our panelists. And you wouldn't believe I cut those bios down by about a page or two for most of them. Let me just ask each of the panelists to start by saying a little bit about, maybe a minute or two, not a dissertation, about how you got involved in the ERA and what you are currently doing to push it forward, to see that we can get the Equal Rights Amendment passed. So I'll just leave it to all of you. You can go in whatever order, popcorn style, and then I'll have some other questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience.
I think I should start because I'm the oldest. But anyway, I got involved in 1970 with the Equal Rights Amendment drive. To first get a amendment in the state of Pennsylvania, which we succeeded in passing in 1971. There are equal rights amendments now, I think, in 24 states. They're not all the same, but the one in Pennsylvania is the exact same wording as the federal one, only it applies to the state. And then my local chapter of Pittsburgh led the drive of getting the Equal Rights Amendment out of committee, because one of our members in that was the head, Dean Witter, of the ERA task force. So we all went and participated in all kinds of activities to get it out of the Senate. That's when and one of the worst things we ever did was we had a silent vigil. You ever stand on the Capitol steps for a whole day and not be able to talk? That was the last silent vigil I ever went to. But anyway, it did come out in 1972. I was lucky to be with our whole group. Was with Alice Hall when it passed. And we went to the National Women's Party. And we thought we were going to a celebration. And she wasn't there. She was in the back room. And we were told she was crying. So we thought she was going to cry. And if you work on anything from 23 to 72, you have a right to cry from joy, right? But she wasn't crying from joy. We actually went back and talked to her. She felt that we were tricked, that they put in the preamble a time limit, which was not in other amendments. And they also changed the second clause to apply to the states in a way that she felt was going to trap us in the South, which essentially happened. Anyway, but there's a fighter. She actually fought to the very end. She recommended that we go to Indiana next, and a group of us did, and that was the last state to ratify until you did it in this year in Nevada. So we're now just 2 states to go. Why do you take Nevada?
Yeah. So I sponsored the ERA resolution in 2015. And at that time, my party did not own either the Senate or the Assembly. And so although they heard it in committee, and the arguments, if you go back to the 70s and listen to the arguments, those are the same arguments that, came up again in 1970. They heard it in committee and then refused to move it. Waited till the very last day and wouldn't bring it up to work session. The building had maybe about 30 or 40 women who had been working on this for a long, long time. And so as I walked into the hall away from the vice chair's office of the committee, I said, once I get reelected, this will be one of the first bills that I will sponsor for the 2017 session. Because I believe that it's important. It's important because if we don't have these rights enshrined in the Constitution, then state by state, they can decide whether to or not. So I put in the bill draft request, brought the bill back in 2017, and on the very first day of our session, our majority leader stood as he ticked off the things that we would bring up this session and try to get them passed and to get the governor to sign them. He said, and we will ratify the ERA this session. We had all of the support. I happen to be a Democrat. We had all the support of my party. And at the witness table, there were some rather curious comments. One lady came and said, we can't pass it because Now I read somewhere that there are at least 476 different sexes, and if you pass the ERA, then that means that women, can, if they want to marry the Eiffel Tower, they can marry the Eiffel Tower. I mean, and a whole lot of things. So we listened. We listened, and it was just beyond me. I think the actual testimony session went for about 2.5 hours, and the chamber was full. We came down to a work session, passed it out of the Senate, went over to the Assembly, and there were a lot of people in the Assembly who wanted to sign, but didn't have an opportunity because I was trying to get it done quick. And so they amended it on the Assembly, and I'm glad they did because that gave us a chance to find out there was a little quirk in there. Senator Ford, our majority leader, said, listen, he said, inside our Constitution, it leaves it up to the Secretary of State whether or not to follow the recommendation of the Senate. There are two different branches, and so we cannot tell the executive branch what to do. And so he said, here's my recommendation. We can tell the Secretary of the Senate what to do. And so when it came back over to our side, I sponsored an amendment to take the Secretary of State out and put the Secretary of the Senate. And that is the one that would immediately transmit this message to Congress. And I mention that because I think that it's important as you fight for something, you have to know the ins and outs and all the nuances. But equality has been something that I've been fighting for all of my life. And this is one more mountain that we've got to climb. And I am determined to make sure that we get it done, this year, and at least in another state. But we got to get it done because we know that we are under assault. So I got into this fight because I believe in equality. I'm staying in this fight because I believe in equality. And I won't back down from this fight because I believe in equality.
It's very difficult to follow those two dynamic responses. And really, I think my first interest in ERA began back in the 70s. Eleanor still was so active, engaged, involved. I got to college in 1974, and it was hard coming out in the civil rights movement and having a very strong mother and 3 sisters not to understand and respect the issues related to equal rights for women. And it certainly resonated with me very strongly going back to that time frame. Then I was a law student over at Duke. I had a professor by the name of Walter Delman here, and one of our assignments was required to write a brief dealing with ERA and what would happen with those states that attempted to rescind their ratifications, what that meant. And of course, when I became a legislator, one of the first things that grabbed me in state government was the pay equity differential within our own state employees, between what women were being paid and what men were being paid with comparable work, and wanting to try to address that issue right here in North Carolina. If we could do it on a broad-based basis for all employees, at least deal with it for our state employees. And I ran into so much institutional resistance, you wouldn't believe it. But I have introduced the ERA bill here in North Carolina, attempting to get it heard. Introduced a pay equity bill based upon one that passed in Massachusetts about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, because I think it was an excellent model for some things that we could do. And in Massachusetts, it got bipartisan support. There have been bills that got introduced. I sit here at UNC today and watching that movie, a tremendous, impressive movie, looking at the violence against women and the sexual assaults on our college campuses. It reminded me of a bill that I introduced just applying to our public universities in this state that would have required certain codes of conduct and restrictions that be in place. And I went to try to get the bill heard. It had been assigned Education Committee. I ran into Senator, I'll go ahead and name him Senator Tillman, one of the oldest members over there. I said, Senator Tillman, can't we get this thing heard at least in committee? There's no reason why we cannot have this kind of code of conduct in terms of violence against women on our campuses or others. He said, well, I just can't understand all these women bring up all these false charges against rape. We don't need nothing like that. Okay? And we're not talking about a person who made that comment a decade ago, 2 decades ago. We're talking about somebody who's made that comment in the last 4 years. That should deeply concern all of us. Same type of thing when it comes to getting ERA heard. And one thing I've suggested is that if they don't want to hear these bills in committee, we go ahead and hold our own mock hearings and bring people out and talk to understand the need for it. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot that has to be done to ignite excitement, enthusiasm, to get this thing back on the front burner, not the back burner, of what we need to do politically. So I'm active, I'm engaged, I'm working with those that are members of the General Assembly in North Carolina on that. I want to work with those in other states that have been successful in doing that. We got a Republican majority here, but it won't be here forever. We can swing some of these districts. We got a chance to do it with these new maps, and I hope that all of you will be on board helping us go out to these swing districts so we can get a Democratic majority in and pass ERA and pay equity right here in North Carolina.
Thank you. I'm gonna start off a little differently because I've looked around this room and I see how many in here that look like me. I know for myself, when I ran for office, I ran on an equality issue. It was for healthcare equality. But my main issue was on equal pay because I had worked as a professional for years and knew that I was not paid fairly, just like Lily Ledbetter. But there was minimal that I could do about it. But as I'm looking in the room and thinking about what I walked into and what I have been working on for numerous years, since Ms. Robbie drove down from the mountains and helped me to assist her, and I tell that all the time. She asked me to do it, and I committed to do it, and when I commit to do something, that's what I do. But one thing that I found certain is when I'm asked to do something, and people ask me to send something, and I'm gonna call it out in here today. I noticed when the bios were read that certain people bios are full. I'm the youngest African American female serving in the North Carolina General Assembly in the House. I have enough accolades. That is not what I'm about. I am self-identified. I don't allow any group to identify me. I do not allow my colleagues to identify me. What I fight for, what I champion for, is who I am. So, yes, I've done some domestic violence. I recently did a domestic violence conversation, a candid conversation. We have got to start saying to women, you can carry your own issue. It's 70% of the women that went to the polls in North Carolina in 2016 that voted, it was women. Women can carry their issue. And when you start believing that women can carry your issue, women can do the ERA in North Carolina, it takes you believing, not me believing. It takes all of us believing it. And that's what I've been trying to say to every generation. There's 7 of us in here that are African American. We don't connect the ERA the way that other women do. And especially in the younger generation, they don't see the connection. So we have a lot of educating to do, and we have a lot of teaching them how to look at the full circle and not look at the dot in the middle, because that whole circle impacts their entire life. And we've got a lot of educating and connecting to do for the millennials. But we also have got to start putting our women at the top and telling them and supporting them when they are carrying the issue that is so important to us. Don't reduce us. Don't reduce us. We are not there for that. We have less than 25% in the North Carolina General Assembly women. That's both parties. We are fighting harder than ever, through racism, through humiliation, through disrespect, and the gender equality that continues to exist. There is a huge generational gap, and it is time for new voices, and it is time for us to support change through the next generation, because we are not going to be able to do it in the environment that we're in if we remain complacent and separate from the millennials.
I am next generation. So how I actually got into this issue is, I guess, back to a year ago. My beautiful roommate, Kenny Bridges, helped organize this. She's not here right now, but she's an angel. And together we actually wrote a paper about how, so for folks who don't know what Title IX is, Title IX prohibits essentially on the basis of gender discrimination, that it basically says you can't discriminate on the basis of gender and have that affect someone's ability to access education, right? And so when we hear Title IX, we usually think sexual assault right now, but that's where that came from. Gender discrimination cannot prevent people from, or sex discrimination, excuse me, cannot prevent people from accessing education, right? So we wrote a paper a year ago about how, based on our Friday nights reading legal paper after legal paper, because obviously that's what you do in college, sex education that is not comprehensive is a violation of Title IX from our reading, right? But then I realized, and we realized that after, so I spent some time after that with the National Women's Law Center, and she spent some time with that, after that, with ERA, and with Marina, who organized this event with Kennedy. And we realized sort of that the way that Title IX has been interpreted is so convoluted and is so, it can vary, right? Like, depending on who it is. I mean, we saw it there with Smeal, like, he's such a constitutional originalist that people can parse the law, parse the language to pieces. And so what's really necessary is to have a baseline, right? Like, you cannot discriminate on the basis of sex, period. If we want there to be comprehensive sex education that tells people how their bodies work, for example. If we want there to be healthy relationship education that tells people what consent means and that what it means to have healthy communication, what it means to have healthy physical interactions with other people. And so on the basis of that, we really got passionate about the issue of the Equal Rights Amendment. So we thought it would be wonderful, really Kennedy, this was a lot of Kennedy's idea, and Marge and Zach. And so I've been supporting them as they've been putting this event together. And I've been a lot on the legal side of things and the legal advocacy side of things through the organizations that I'm part of. And we've been thinking that this is a really important issue for young people to know about, especially as Title IX guidance has been rescinded in recent years and is under threat of continuously being rescinded. And there's nothing that says you can't do that, right? Every time there's a new administration, like the Department of Education can just kind of say, your civil rights, that they don't really matter anymore. Like, as was mentioned before, we're not a class that's protected under scrutiny. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got into this issue, and we've been doing a lot of gender equity advocacy. And I also think it's important to note that with the millennials being involved, there's also the addition of viewing sex discrimination as something that is different from gender discrimination too, right? So when we think about sex discrimination, I think that we think about the ability to become pregnant. We think about like how your body works, things like that, as opposed to because gender expression has, the thinking surrounding gender expression has developed so differently. There are people who identify as transgender and don't decide to get gender affirming surgery or transition, right? Or, yeah, so some of the language that was used in the film, for example, and some of the arguments that people made, oh, well, women's ability to become pregnant is unique only to women like that. And so we think a lot about that as well, and how that is actually just sex-based discrimination, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where we are and what we're doing right now.
Well, I think I'm a relative newcomer to the ERA. When I graduated from college was 1982, which was the year that the deadline expired. And so it was just the beginning of the ERA really going to the back burner, as it was called. And I was very involved in the International Human Rights Movement. Started over time to feel some type of gender bias in that movement that led me to form called Equality Now 25 years ago to focus on human rights violations against women around the world. And so I was working in that space where we really focused a lot on CEDAW, the Convention on Women, which was mentioned in the film, because when you're working in the International Women's Rights Movement with all these groups, and their countries have all ratified CEDAW, you really have a credibility gap. And so to the extent that we were doing anything here in the US, it was really focusing on trying to get CEDAW ratified, which sadly it still is not. And of course, one of the first obligations of CEDAW for any country is to have a constitutional equality provision in its national constitution. And that's why, as I mentioned in the film, people would say, well, it's just a backdoor of the ERA, because if we ratify CEDAW, then we would have to have an ERA. And that always seemed like it was a good thing, not a bad thing, but it was just a strange thing that was in the back of my mind, and it wasn't really very much of a focus for me. But I came to know Congresswoman Carla because we worked very closely together on human trafficking. In 2000, the bill in Congress, the Child Human Protection Act, and on sex tourism in New York State. So I came to know her, and a few years ago I was talking with her about trafficking, and she was so depressed. She just said, everything I've worked for is just getting rolled backwards, and there's just nothing I can do about it. And, my two ambitions in life, really, my biggest goals were to get the Second Avenue subway in the ERA. And she just got the Second Avenue subway. So that left the ERA. And she just explained to me, the problem she realized all these years, she's been such a long-time champion of the ERA in Congress, but there wasn't really any kind of public constituency for it. So she would get lots of sponsors every session, she would introduce it, but it never went anywhere. And I think she just really was looking at me to say, why don't we work on this? Why don't you spend some energy on this to try to build a broad-based public constituency? And I said, I don't know, I haven't really thought about that much. She said, let's call Ellie Smeal. She picked up the phone right there and called Ellie, and that sounds like a good idea. And I started talking to people for quite a while before we started the ERA Coalition to just get at my own sense and then do some research. And I found some interesting things. One, people kind of over my age knew what the ERA was, all thought we had it already. They just were wrong. They just thought either because it passed, it wasn't ratified, that part they forgot, or they thought it was like the 14th Amendment, and so we kind of had it. So they just really didn't think we had an issue there. And then people under my age had no idea what I was talking about when I said ERA. They literally didn't even know what it stood for. They'd never heard of it. And mostly when you explained it to them, they became pretty outraged when they found out we don't have it and seemed to want it. And so that was interesting. That kind of level of an information gap that led me to believe, well, if we could just turn that around, maybe enough things have changed, and we could really mobilize the public constituency, and Congress could be hearing from their constituents that this is a priority and we do need it. And everybody kept asking me, why do we need it? And that was the legal research that for me was very helpful to put in a book and try to really explain what difference would it make in terms of something like pregnancy discrimination or pay inequity or gender-based violence, which actually wasn't even an issue really in the 70s campaign. It wasn't seen so much as an equality issue as it is now for gender-based violence. So I tried to put all of that together and finally decided we should move forward and try to build a coalition, because I found across the country there were many people who had actually been working on the ERA since 1982, but they were pretty isolated, not really joined in any kind of And the bigger organizations like Feminist were doing lots of different issues, so there wasn't that particular focus. So we tried to just pull together organizations and individuals into a structure so that we could all coordinate and build up. And there are two different approaches. Carla Maloney's been doing it a long time. We just started over again. But now, as of 5 or 6 years ago, another idea came across, as Ellie mentioned, that we could just remove the deadline and maybe just ratify. And it was 3 states, and now, thanks to Senator Spearman, it's a 2-state approach. So those are 2 tracks that we support in the coalition. Both of those tracks, mainly just trying to educate people on what the ERA is and why we need it, and get them mobilized to find out what the their congressional delegation think about it, and get politically active. But we're about to launch a 3rd track, so I'll just mention that. And that came around as a result of the campaign and the election last year, and all the hate that came out in so many ways, and a feeling that if we were going to start all over with an ERA, why not go back to the Constitution when it was first written and address fundamentally, finally, the fact that both race and sex were left out of the Constitution. And so with a group of constitutional scholars, we did a draft of a more expansive ERA that covers race discrimination and sex discrimination, and really spells out sex discrimination to cover in a very explicit way gender identity, sexual orientation, pregnancy discrimination. And so we're looking forward to the introduction of that bill in Congress later this year. That will be a kind of 3rd track for the coalition. But the bottom line is that we just feel we want everybody in this country to understand better that we don't have constitutional equality, that we need constitutional equality, and that it really should be a no-brainer that we're behind the rest of the world and we have to catch up. Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned that 3rd track, which I hadn't been aware of, and I wonder if you might say a little bit more about that. Particularly, I'd like to hear you and other panelists talk about how will life change for the trans woman, for the African-American single mom, which I am, for any individual who might have a case where strict scrutiny is not applied, but instead there's that class, the only class where intermediate scrutiny is applied. How might we actually see that play out? And I'd also love to hear you, Senator Spearman, talk a little bit about what has changed in Nevada since it's been ratified there. And I'll leave that question out there, then I think we can turn it to the audience after that big question.
Okay, well, I think a lot would change. Not everything overnight, of course, but I think one of the problems we have, not having an ERA of any kind, is there are gaps in the law. There are some laws that are somewhat protecting some people, but it's just not effective. It's not comprehensive. They're just full of loopholes and judicial interpretations that roll things back. And so if we have an ERA in the Constitution, that's just something that would give Congress an additional, strength. I mean, just to give an example, I think it's mentioned from the Violence Against Women Act, where the idea in that act, sponsored by Joe Biden, was to give women a right of recourse in the federal courts. So if your state courts weren't working for you, you could go to federal courts. And it was in 1994 that it was passed, and that same year, Christy Carla also mentioned that brought a case. And I think that case is just identical to any of those academic campus sexual assault cases we hear about today. And she went all the way to the Supreme Court, and her case was thrown out. Why? Because there was no basis in the Constitution. It wasn't about her case, it was about that law of Joe Biden, that provision. There was no basis for it. Because all of these laws, Title VII, Title IX, all of those laws that we think of as civil rights laws really are not coming under the 14th Amendment or any kind of constitutional rights provision. They're coming under the Commerce Clause. And what the Supreme Court said is, you know what? You can stretch the Commerce Clause as far as you want, but it stops here, violence against women. And that's where they started to cut it. So we really need our own constitutional clause that will allow Congress to pass all kinds of laws. And obviously that's not an overnight process, but those laws would give women and everyone remedies that they don't currently have. And I think simple sex discrimination provision would cover everybody transgender, sexual orientation, I think that would obviously be up to the Supreme Court, but there's absolutely no reason legally that it shouldn't be interpreted in a broad and comprehensive way. So I think that that gives us a legal framework, but also at a sort of higher level of principle. I think to just have the highest law of the land say that everybody is equal is really, really important, not just for legal reasons, but for social reasons and for social change reasons. And especially in times like today where the kind of things we're seeing, to me, are just unimaginable. The things that people are just allowed to go out there and say because we have this expansive free speech concept, but we need a really important rights concept, an equality concept, so that there's a sense of responsibility about what we're saying and how we're treating each other.
I'm trying to think of a way to say this succinctly, but a large portion of the work from 1970 to now on the fight for women's rights has been to pass a law only to see it gutted by the courts and then to do it all over again. And I mean do it all over again. Everybody thinks that the Title IX that was passed in 72 has been in existence from then to now. It was gutted by the Reagan administration and the Supreme, and they supported the Grove City case, which disemboweled it. We then had to spend 4 years to put it back on the books. You heard the whole thing in the movie about Title VII, where it's been brutalized so many times I can't even tell you. And why did the women's movement zero in on the ERA in the early 70s? Because we were losing court cases. You only hear the ones we win. Believe me, we've lost a lot of them. Now, it's not just court, though, and I think it's important to understand that if you can't get someplace to go to another level, you're keeping on repeating and repeating and repeating. And so I think the movement has been stalled, by all these crazy decisions. There is no such thing as, in the pregnancy discrimination case of 1976, the Supreme Court ruled, it wasn't like we didn't think that Title VII covered pregnancy. We thought it did, for heaven's sakes. And then they ruled that, no, wait, it doesn't, because there's 3 different types of people here. There are men, and there are women, and there are pregnant people. And the pregnant people don't have any protection. I mean, those are the kinds of nonsense, but it keeps, now, just imagine, though, that pregnancy discrimination, which does not now cover pregnancy discrimination, which we think it should, but we had to put on when they ruled that, what did we do? We passed a law, 1978, covering pregnancy discrimination. Now, it's not like it was a waste of time to pass that law. It results in about $4 to $5 billion of benefits to women who are pregnant every year. So it was a big deal. Does it cover the way it should if we had a constitutional error? No. But we got another lift in there. But we can't keep doing that. I mean, I could go through so many battles. Unfortunately, I've been in a position to fight a lot of them. And I don't think that people realize there's no such thing as winning and losing. There's all gradations. And by the way, because of the Equal Rights Amendment, I firmly believe that, and the fight, we have a political movement for women that is much more powerful than it ever was. Because all those people who marched and rallied, and we had thousands and thousands of people involved in every one of the unratified states, plus all kinds of people who traveled all over the country. They didn't just go away. We knocked down the hatches and decided we had to win more political offices. It was the foundation of a movement. Then they start picking on the abortion issue, and I could go on that one. What we would like is, of course, a reasonable court that would rule that what they're doing on abortion and birth control is sex discrimination. They are not regulating. To say we aren't going to cover Viagra. They cover it, and believe me, we spend a lot of money in Viagra. A general told me 10 years ago, so God knows what it is now, that the United States military spent something like $400 million a year on providing Viagra, as if young men needed that. So basically, but in constant, more power to men's reproduction, but less power to women, taking it away even though medical science had given us a way to be able to control our own lives, to have children in a more premium way, time in our lives, etc. What we want to do, and by the way, there's no question that the current ERA has a constitutional history that did not include abortion or gay rights. But times have changed, and that sex discrimination in there can be used. And I believe that it will be if we pass it. Anyway, we can pass it. I just say, by the way, this redo of the amendment to include race didn't start just now. The first ERA that passed at the state level that included race is Massachusetts, and I think it was passed in 1986. I've been involved in so many state battles, I can't remember which date anymore. But because basically those many amendments were passed, but we were then stuck because we tried to pass it in Iowa, we lost. Tried to pass it, in, the Republic of they keep calling it the most liberal state, Vermont. We lost by 5,000 votes passing the ERA, and I can tell you how we lost, but it's too long. But then when we got discouraged on that, we said we should put them all in. And so the Massachusetts ERA does have race. I think it has ethnicity as well, because we would need ethnicity, as we all know. So basically, we got to try everything. That's why I'm for try the new one, try a rewrite, try the 3 states, which is now 2 states. Get involved and keep the political movement going, because this whole thing, and by the way, the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement has been intertwined for as long as I've been involved, right? I mean, we marched to, past God knows every civil right. And there wouldn't be a women's movement, in my opinion, without the civil rights movement. We learned all the older leaders came from the civil rights movement, and we built the laws that were together. Title VII is a part of the Great Civil Rights Act of 1964. Title IX was, which is education, was modeled after the sixth section of the Civil Rights Act that did include sex. So we are intertwined. We have a common destiny. We want equality for all, and we're not going to stop until we get it. And by the way, this new craziness of the right wing, the Nazi movement isn't new in the United States. It's just that this president has given them license to appear again. And we got to make sure they disappear again. And so we're going to change it, and we have 3. One other thing is that the amendment that Maloney has introduced is not the original one either. She is hell-bent to put the word woman in the Constitution. So she added a sentence which says women shall have equal rights in the United States, and all those subjects to its jurisdiction, which would cover military bases and territories, because the ERA as presently written only covers the United States and the states. And so I could go on, but I think she's right. Put women in it. And I don't know, is it in the second version?
Yes.
Yeah, that sentence is in both of the new rewrites. So anyway.
And now you know why the movement didn't die. People are passionate about this. Ask me the question again.
I had a Ron's question about how will like change the areas, yes, but I wanted to hear about how things change in Nevada.
So, here's what happened. The ERA passing in Nevada was getting ratified by Nevada was another rung on the ladder towards equality. And I think Justin said it best, things don't change overnight. But one of the things that I did see as a result of that, the day that we ratified the ERA in the Senate chamber, it was packed. And it was packed with young, older, young at heart, African American, Latina, Anglo, just people of all stripes were there. And when the vote went down and it was clear that we were going to ratify it, there was a spontaneous applause. And I like to say that spontaneous applause was, heard across the state and probably across the nation. Because what has happened is that once you recognize that there is a right to equal rights, it does something to the group that you have said, you are worthy of this. Now, I don't know how many of y'all, I spoke last year during a much happier time at the Democratic National Convention. And the first sentence of my speech went like this. I'm African American, I'm a veteran, I'm an ordained minister, and I'm a proud member of the LGBTQ community. I got 3 strikes against me. Hello, I can't catch a break, all right? And so for me, when you start talking about equality and what that means, there is an intersection between discrimination based upon gender, discrimination based upon race, discrimination based upon, and I don't say sexual orientation, it's affectional orientation. And there is an intersection there that unless we break down those walls, they will continue. And every time we get rights for one group, we'll have to come right back again and get rights for another group. And so when you talk about why should we pass this, and what will that mean? I believe that one of the things that it will mean is that we as Americans will stand up and say once and for all, equality under the law shall not be abridged, period. Period. It's about equality. It's not about, all of the nonsense about marrying the Eiffel Tower or anything like that. What it is, it's about equality. And, I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to hear Mae Jemison, first African-American woman to go into space. And she was making a point about diversity. And some of you may not remember this, but let me date myself. She said, when she was younger, when she was in her 20s and her 30s, when a woman got breast cancer, it was like, a death knell. And there were several women who died and could have been cured because they did not want the mastectomy. Because breast cancer, to cure breast cancer, the common, quote, wisdom of the time was chop it off. Mastectomy. Both of them. Double mastectomy. And there were women who associated their breast with their femininity, with their identity, and all that sort of thing. And by the way, some of that nonsense was supported by their husbands. And she said, and so, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was mastectomy. Chop them off. She said, funny thing happened in the 1980s with prostate cancer. I'm gonna set that right there. Now all of a sudden, medical science was like, we gotta find a way. We gotta find a way. And I say, I think that there's a certain duplicity in the arguments that people have about whether or not pregnancy should be covered and whether or not it is a pre-existing condition, or whether we should support mothers with affordable child care. By the way, I had one of those bills this last session. You know what? Because the same people who don't want this type of equality are the same people who will tell you that the right to life exists even before they come out of the womb. And I say, listen, you cannot consecrate a life that has not passed the uterus yet, and then desecrate a life once it gets out here and refuse to support that life. You're going to be pro-life. What I say to them, and I said this on the floor, you're going to be pro-life. You're going to be pro-life for that 5-year-old that is running around on the street because their parents are working. And they got snot coming out of their nose, and their shoes are run over. They haven't eaten in 2 days. If you're pro-life, then you will pass laws, you will pass statutes that will support life once it gets here. If you are pro-life, then you will also protect the life of our seasoned citizens and not outside your window until death knocks on your door, because we don't have any more use for you. And so, the whole idea about equality is about equality, period. That's all it is, equality. And I'm like, how many of y'all don't get this? That's what I ask. How many of y'all don't get this? I mean, really? Really? All of this time, and I'm talking to people that have degrees, and talking to them, they're supposed to be educated people. And I'm like, how come y'all don't get this? Do I need to draw a picture? Do I need to draw a map? What do I need to do here? And so the fight for equality must continue. And we've got to make sure that whatever way we can get it. And I say as a legislator, a lot of times bills will start, one way. And one of the strategies that many legislators do is they take pieces of a bill and they run those separately. Because at the end, when you have to negotiate, if you will, to try to get it passed, at least you have introduced the concepts before to the bodies. And so don't let anybody tell you that you have got to come down on one side or the other. I say let all of them go forward. Because what they will want to do is the same thing that they did with African Americans. They started separating us by PhD and no degree. Started separating us by, she's light-skinned, light, bright, and almost white. She's, they're dark-skinned, get back. If somebody got good hair, I said, everybody got good hair. If it's on their head, everybody's hair is good. And so we don't want people to start separating us. It's important that we understand the fight for equality is just that. It's about equality. It's about equality. And listen, if you don't start electing people, to believe in equality, it will never happen. And here's what I said to them a few weeks ago when I was in West Hollywood. If you ask someone who's running for election or re-election if they will support and help get this bill out of committee and on the floor and to an affirmative vote, if they cannot support your right to equality, they do not deserve your vote.
We'll get back to the question about what will change when the ERA is passed. One thing I can say is look at the parallels with the Civil Rights Movement. Before the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the only way African Americans in the South had rights, privileges, public accommodations, or whatever it might have happened to have been at that time, was if local ordinances were passed. Perhaps they were passed in Durham, or Chapel Hill, or Asheville. Okay, a hodgepodge. Today, when it comes to equal pay, it's a hodgepodge. You got to go to Massachusetts, and it's not the greatest bill in the world, but it's a whole lot better than not having any kind of pay equity bill at all. Do you need that kind of hodgepodge? You need a constitutional amendment that protects those who live in all 50 states, in the territories. It's obvious. It's necessary. And the first thing that ought to be done, the first thing that you call upon local governments to do, state governments to do, corporate America to do, is pay equity studies to get rid of the pay differentials so that women are not out there making 78, 79 cents on a dollar. I mean, if you look back to this, like 1965, only about 7% of those women giving birth to kids were not married. Why is it married? You look back to about 2014, over 41% were not married. If you look at those under 30 years old, 53% are not married. And what does that mean when they don't marry? They're not married. They've got kids. Most likely they're going to end up on food stamps. They're going to end up living in poverty frequently, more frequently challenged throughout their lifestyles. They're going to be challenged throughout their lives. We need to be concerned about what that all means. We need to be concerned about that fabric and how it comes together. I strongly believe that if we today take what is happening in your state, we go out there in the bottom, we see what's happening. We see how they got it through. Yeah, they got a Democratic majority in both the House and they got it in the Senate. But we need to use it as a platform to reignite the excitement. We need to get people engaged on this issue once more. We need to get people to understand, just because there are a few people who have broken that glass ceiling, it doesn't mean that all people have those equal rights, have the same access to opportunity. We need to get this generation today engaged the way the generation was engaged back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Now it's incumbent upon us to do that. Why is it necessary? It's imperative. Because if we don't take on that challenge, if we don't pass on that baton, if we do not demand equal rights for all, if we don't make certain, me as a man, it means your sisters, that means your daughters, that means your mothers, your grandmothers. But it means that all of us who are part of this humanity here in the United States deserve to have the same rights, dignities, and privileges. And it needs to be embedded in that Constitution so that when you have the cases go up to the court, yes, you have an opportunity for that court to look at these cases and use a strict scrutiny type of standard. You don't need this intermediate standard out there that's not being applied in other circumstances. We need to understand that there is a compelling interest that unites us all in doing this. If we sit back and become complacent, if we sit back and do not involve ourselves in dialogue, discussion, and bring people to the table, and make certain that those that come out to demonstrations, that those that come out to rallies, to make certain that those who are part of political campaigns are not engaged in this issue, then we're being remiss in the process. I know one thing, that Hillary Clinton had been successful as president of this country, was in the presidency today, this would not be a conversation that we would be talking about whether it's necessary. The only thing we'll be talking about is what the time frame would be for getting it accomplished. And what does that mean? We got Trump in there. We know he's divisive. We know what he represents. We know where he stands. We know what Betsy DeVos did last week, Secretary of Education, saying we got to revisit Title IX. We're going to reinterpret it again. But with the goal of going in there and making certain that when it comes to those policies, that particularly impact our college campuses, our education system, we can be taking steps backwards, not steps forward. We cannot afford to regress. We have to continue progress. We have to get that momentum reestablished. And it's really up to us individually and collectively to do it. I know that we can. I know that we must. I know it's imperative. Because I've seen the change that's taken place in this country over the last 50 years. I've seen what's happened to opportunities for women and for African Americans and for that whole multicolored coalition of people. But we're not there yet. We don't have those equal rights, and we need to bestow them upon everyone. So I really look at each of you that's in the audience today. I know you're interested. I know you're active. I know you're engaged and you're involved, or you wouldn't be here, but particularly for all of you that are in our colleges and universities. Help work with us. Come together with us. Let's get this generation actively engaged and become the new activists. Because some of us are up here today, another decade or so, we may not be here. Okay? But we don't need to wait a decade. It doesn't matter how long Trump is in office. It doesn't matter how long the Republicans are in majority here in North Carolina. We can change that, and we can change it relatively quickly if we're politically active, we're politically engaged, and we are strategic in the deployment of our resources. We can do it. It doesn't make a difference even if they have a little bit more money. We got more manpower, we got more boots on the ground, and we fought those battles, and we fought those struggles before, and we were successful in doing it. Successful during the civil rights movement, successful in so many other areas where we needed to establish political equality. We can't be remiss in letting women's rights, and rights regardless of gender, be part of the dialogue that we are somehow not quite as compassionate about. With that, Representative, tell us from your heart, from your soul, what you think we can do here in North Carolina.
But I really want to thank you, Senator Spearman. When I made the call we've been putting the equal rights amendment in every cycle. But when I realized they had got it done, I got on the phone and I called Senator Spearman and she took my call. And, you don't have to take a legislator's call now, you don't have to. But she did, and I told her what I wanted. And she said, I am willing to do whatever it takes to help. And so I thank you for that. Senator McKissick has been there, and I kind of just got there. But I intend to be there a little while until I decide it's time for me to go. I'm not going to let them tell me when it's time for me to go. It's going to be when I decide to go. But as long as I'm there, I'm going to fight what I feel is needed for women, for children. And I also was looking at the new term is gender equity. That's the new term we're starting to see pop up, not as fluent in America as we are across the waters in London and other countries that have moved forward, more forward than what we have. We're behind on women's issues. We're behind on gender issues. We're just behind. And there's no excuse for it. The other day, I did a domestic violence, a candid conversation. And the Indian woman happened to be in that meeting. And of course, you have confidentiality for these women when you do a candid conversation. And she was a banker, a vice president of one of the hugest banks in North Carolina. And she was being beaten by her husband. She was unable to go to her human resources because she was told by some of her colleagues she would lose her job for going to human resources within this huge bank here in North Carolina. So she's hid. And then she befriended someone that also was manipulating her. Her family was non-supportive because of the Indian country she was from. She had to marry this person like the diocese. She had to do that, and you could not leave your husband. So she was still here in America without her family support, even the family that she was here. And then she was a couple of little children, and she had gone to the shelter. We wouldn't have that issue if we had an equal rights amendment. We wouldn't have that. We wouldn't have college students graduating, having their degree, and they still $15,000 different pay from their counterpart. I have a degree. Some of us have degrees. I should want the same pay so I can take care of my children just like anybody else to a certain standard. That's what we should want. I would say let's don't focus on Trump because I'm not. I'm not focused on the next 4 years for the presidential election to come around. I'm focused on North Carolina. I'm focused on if we can pick up seats in the North Carolina General Assembly so that we have people that can carry a women's agenda, that can carry an equity agenda. Because it's not going to happen until that happens. We're not going to get there. I'm realistic. I have to be. But it can happen. It can happen if people are engaged, if they can keep their focus on the state and out of the federal. We got a few more years before it's another presidential election. But we don't have another few years in the state of North Carolina because we've lost 50 years already. We have. So we have to focus on getting people in our state houses, in even the council of state. They're after that now. They're getting ready to redraw the judicial lines. They're going to take the judgeship. So who you going to have in court? You're not going to have anybody. We get ministerial. We have to stay focused on what we can do in North Carolina to make change right here before we can go to the federal level. And we got a huge change to make in North Carolina. Before the census is done, when I get up on that floor as a nurse and I talk about Medicaid expansion, I said when people are dying, they don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They don't. When you're holding their loved one hand, they don't care about that. That's what equal rights is. It shouldn't be whether I'm in this party or I'm in that party. Is it going to benefit the next generation? Is it going to benefit my great-grandchildren, my grandchildren? We cannot afford to be disengaged. When you leave here, get on the phone, talk to 10 people. If they don't know what the ERA, hold a house party just like we did to get Obama elected. And tell them about why it's so important. Because we wouldn't have these domestic violence issues. We wouldn't have the huge issue with the separation in pay. Everybody should be paid fairly. I don't care who they are. We have the same blood. It's real.
I think I would. I used to think that we would get more than one or two questions in. When you get very passionate people who are doing great work together, it's hard for them not to say a whole lot. So what I'm going to do is, we won't be able to go to the floor for questions. I'm going to ask Emily to close us out to give her a chance, if you'd like.
I'm gonna follow all that hype.
And then what we're going to do is ask you, if you are dying to do something, very anxious to do something, you can sign up to work with North Carolina ERA. Where's the sign? There you are, Marina.
Yes, we will hook you up.
While I have the floor, let me just say, Marina, quote, and Mark, Marina's summer intern, we have a MOXIE program, which provides internships for our young women here in organizations fighting for women's causes and gender equity. And Marge and Kennedy, who was very instrumental in putting all this together, and Emily as well. They were Marina's right and left hand women, and we want to thank them.
I think there's a little thing. Listen, once we get the rest of the other two states, and I'm thinking if this trend continues, we'll get more than that. We have got to make sure that we have people in Congress who will vote the right way to extend the deadline. Because if we don't, we will do all of this and it will be for naught. And so, yes, you have to fight for it here in North Carolina, but you better make sure that when the elections come up in 2018, that Equal Rights Amendment is on the minds of every voter. Every voter. Nobody should go back to Washington, D.C. if they do not support the ERA.
So the question you asked was, what do you think is going to happen when the ERA is passed? I think one of the first things that we would say is a whole lot of lawsuits. Because I know there's a lot of us who've been looking for legal reasoning for a lot of the issues that we faced for a really long time, like longer legal standing. Every time we bring it up to lawyers, they say, oh, it's kind of been, it's been brought up in the courts, and people have dismissed it really quickly because it seems kind of like a reach and it's all based on interpretation. But if you have something that just kind of says, no, you cannot deny people basic human rights, that's kind of set in stone. And it's so much harder. I mean, this is more for the students, y'all probably already know this, but it's so much harder to get rid of the amendment, y'all, than it is to go to law. And so much of, like, with the Title IX guys, for example, I know I keep going back to that, but, like, you can understand that so easily. So much of that is based on interpretation. A lot of the work that we've done saying that things are unjust, and a lot of the things that we've done that we've brought up to lawyers in terms of policy, specifically regarding, like, leaving information out of adolescent sex education programs, having medically inaccurate sex education programs all over the United States. For example, only 11 states actually have are required to have medically accurate sex education programs. That for women in particular is incredibly horrible for their prospects in the future. and can inhibit their ability to access education if they don't even know how their bodies work and how to access contraception, for example. So when we bring that forward, we try to use Title IX. We often get, oh, well, that's all dependent on guidance, right? But if you have a law that straight up says you cannot deny people like basic human rights, that's a whole other issue. And we've talked to lawyers about this, and this is the response we get. So even though that's just one simple example, there's going to be a whole lot more lawsuits from what I understand going forward as
Thank the panelists for their time, and they've traveled a distance to be here from New York, DC, Nevada, all over North Carolina. We have some gifts just to say thank you. We really appreciate your time, your efforts, and your expertise. We'll start with Representative Cunningham and Emily. Thank you. Senator Spearman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a gift too for everybody, the latest issue of this magazine. We're celebrating our 45th anniversary, and there's a whole thing that Gloria wrote, but it's really interesting. And the movement is moving on all fronts. It also has a global section. And if you didn't get the issue on the marches, I mean, think about what happened on January 21st. On and up. 5.6 million people marched, and 600 and some marches in the United States, 1 million in Washington, 1 million in New York, 750,000 in Los Angeles. I love these numbers. How many in North Carolina? 12,000?
No, 12 marches.
12 marches in North Carolina.
17 to 30,000 people.
I mean, this is, all we have to do is organize these people. They're there. And so, anyway, just think of that. I sometimes when I get discouraged, I just look at the ball. And all 7 continents, including Antarctica.
Woo!
Another round of applause for our
Please do feel free to come to the front and get your copy of that magazine. And if you need to talk with them, I know they'll stay and talk to you a little
I don't know how much money they have, but you think that stuff is the